it's dawned on me that you ain't coming back. I've lost my chance to see us find our way back. And in the end, amidst these trying times, I'll always try to find you. I'll lie to you to find the truth that you hold back. So stay with me. You know that I'll follow. I can't breathe. Together we'll fall apart. Stay here right in my arms, and we'll start again. So stay. Dramatically talk to me, and it's so funny, you're all I wanted, and I can't talk, want you out of my life, so say none. I'll wait for days if you ain't one, I'll just say none. So stay with me, you know that I'll follow. I can't breathe, together we'll fall apart. Stay here right in my arms, we'll start again. So stay with me, together we'll fall apart. Together we'll fall apart. Together we'll fall apart. Stay here right in my arms, and we'll start again. So stay with me. Together we'll fall apart.
Opportunistic, still rubbing panels as they go together. It's folded the wing mirror in on Gerardo's car.
Misano is such a difficult circuit for these guys to get right. There's a lot of start-stop sections around the back. It's a very, very quick section as well.
It's a fantastic start from the 23. They're 4 wide there by the look of it.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Warning: the following video contains flashing imagery that may cause discomfort and/or seizures for those with photosensitive epilepsy. Viewer discretion is advised.
Tell me somebody how long he will be on my mind.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Chaz Draycott Media, and welcome to another round of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. We're on the home stretch now. We're into the final 3 race meetings of the season, and things are getting uber spicy. It's getting to that point of the season now where it really is crunch time, and drivers need to scramble for every single point they can. And one thing that we've discussed before now is the point system is very, very close between each position in this championship, so it's hard for drivers at the very top to score points against one another. My name's Chaz Draycott. I'm delighted to be joined once again by Ed May in the commentary box. Ed, we're at a very, very tricky circuit tonight. The Hungaroring, it doesn't look that bad on paper, but it's such a technical place to race around, isn't it?
Yes, it's so tricky. Obviously, you say, like, on paper, it doesn't look too bad, but the paper cannot translate all of the elevation changes and little intricacies that each corner has that makes it just so tricky to get absolutely nailed down. I mean, the first sector around here, especially those sort of that downhill left-right section you get to at the start of the lap, that's so tricky in any car, but especially in these GT4s where you need to get the rotation in. They're fairly understeery at times, so to try and get that rotation in is going to be really difficult for a lot of these drivers. I'll tell you what, I am absolutely looking forward to all of the action here. Of course, you've got that long start-finish straight. You're going to see plenty of action in towards turn 1, but it is going to be a circuit that really is one that I think the drivers will make a lot of the difference.
They absolutely will. Absolutely will. Let's have a look at the difference then in the championship standings at the moment. As you see, still at the top of the pile, we have Lewis Ward, 160 points, 13 points clear of Callum Brandt, and Lewis has finished on the podium in every single race so far this season. 3 third places, 3 race wins, and 1 second place, which was at round 4. And behind him, Callum Brandt, certainly a superstar in this championship at the moment. He's been on the podium in all but 1, with 3 second places, 2 third places, and a race victory to his name. And then the other driver in the fight is Simon Povey. Now he's, 38 points behind Lewis Ward, and that is quite the big gap considering how difficult it is to score points that sort of exaggerate anyway at those sort of top positions. Simon, in every race he's been in so far, though, has been either first or second, so he's had a great record, but unfortunately he has... Oh, actually, no, he did miss a round at the start of the season, but then he scored no points at the Red Bull Ring last time out after getting that pit lane penalty. And even in the teams, Ed, that's the main talking point, though. RD Simsport and Apex Racing Academy, 2 points between them. It's phenomenal.
It is absolutely amazing viewing just to see the tasty little battles we might see towards the end of the season. And speaking of RD Simsport, actually there's an intriguing little battle there for 4th place in the overall Drivers' Championship between the RD Simsport driver of Christopher Smith in 5th, just 3 points behind Rob Sharp, so it's as close as you like. I mean, you have a look at that midfield. So many tight battles that could be decided in just these next few races. It is, like you say, Chaz, all to play for. So many drivers are in with a shot, and I mean, looking at Lewis Ward, his track record has been brilliant this season, coming off the back of a pivotal win at the Red Bull Ring, which saw his main championship rival, Simon Povey, drop out of the order, finishing with 0 points. And the same with Callum Brandt, who, when he finished in 3rd place, but had to do an amazing fight-back drive. It was an Apex Racing Academy 1-2 as well. Chaz has actually just... my memory has been jogged, so... I think Apex Racing Academy certainly seems to be, while they are second, I think favourites for taking this championship at the end.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, Callum and Chris have been very consistent in fighting with them up there as well. It's a real shame that we won't have Simon Povey out there tonight, by the way. He's not going to be on the grid this evening, I'm afraid. It's a real shame, but he is not going to be able to make it. He's had an issue with his wheel ahead of this evening. And for some reason, all of the BMW M4s do not seem to have decals on them, and I don't know why. But all the BMWs don't seem to have decals, all the other cars do. We've been through the McLarens, we've had a look at the Aston Martins. Yeah, there's Mark Johnson in this sort of weird hybrid livery. Let's have a look at the Porsches. Yeah, the Porsches have got decal layers. So the BMWs do not. So while we've got 3 minutes of practice left, I'm going to try and sort that out, Ed. But why don't you give us your sort of predictions for tonight? We were talking before about what cars might be good, what might not. What do you reckon? Is there any sort of definite sort of guesses you could put in?
I think this could be one where the Aston Martins might have a little bit more of a resurgence. They weren't too bad, come to think of it, at the Red Bull Ring, and it's purely just down to the elevation. The turbochargers in those cars really do a lot of work in getting the power through, and I think something that's a bit more naturally aspirated, something like the Mercedes, it might struggle, same as well with the Porsche, but then the Porsche, it really does benefit a lot through the tight twisty bits in sort of the second and third sector, so that might be one to watch out for as a potential to have the books in terms of where the Porsches come. But I do imagine Callum Brandt, he's going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to get a championship charge back on track, and to do it, he has to win tonight, and even better would be to get pole position, of course.
Yep, one extra championship point for taking pole position. So that's been certainly something I don't want to say we've glossed over it, but it's very easy to not pay attention to that so much. You and I have both seen championships decided by 1 point in the past, Ed. In the iRacing World of Outlaws sprint cars last night, I was part of the production on that, and the championship was unbelievable because of the way that racing works. The two drivers that were fighting for the title were swapping a place every single corner each. So the points were going up for one of them, then down for the other, then up again for one of them, then down for the other. And I think there was only 2 or 3 points in it in the end after a whole season. And you're talking like over 800 points. And it's just remarkable to see what tiny margins it can come down to. And we're going to get the same here at the end of this season. There's a bit of a hybrid livery going on here. As the cars do get closer and render properly, you will see the liveries changing a little bit like that. As Heinz Mayer comes towards us, John Barnes was the car in front there. A bit of an update as well, by the way, on the special event which was announced recently for the Sim Racing Magazine community. We're going to be doing the Sim Racing Magazine event's Daytona Classic, which is going to be sponsored by Orris Digital. So probably a good time to get Heinz Mayer or Ralph Mayer up on screen, even though they are in the Crockery Direct liveries. We're going to be racing the HPD ARX01C, Acura LMP2 car, the GT1 cars of the Aston Martin DBR9 and the Chevrolet Corvette C6R, and the BMW Z4 GT3. The LMP2 entries are now full. We have 12 of them entered. We do have, I think, 7 or 8 now GT1s. In fact, just looking at the new entry list, I think we've got 9 GT1s now out of the 12 spots available, and we've got about 5 GT3 cars. So it's looking like a solid grid for now, and Ed, we're going to be in the commentary box together again for that one. I'm really looking forward to that. 28th of February in the evening, 2.4 hours of Daytona, going into the sunset like we are here. That's going to be a great evening, isn't it?
That's going to be brilliant, yeah, and it's going to be just after, of course, the final round of the GT4 Challenge. So you might have a chance to watch maybe some of our new champions out there with, well, a little bit more to play for in terms of bragging rights, of course. We can see what might come through for that one. But like I say, Chaz, I absolutely love those cars. The HPD, the RX car is so good, so fun to drive, especially imagine that car going through the bus stop at breakneck speeds. That's going to be absolutely wonderful. And then the sounds of the Corvette and the Aston Martin. I know you love the Corvette. For me, the Aston Martin, it just sounds beautiful. And I cannot wait to see it back in action.
I think on the original post on my website, the description was that the Aston is going to scream its way around the banking, followed by the rolling thunderstorm that is the Chevrolet Corvette C6R, because what a great sounding machine that is. I mean, they both are, you're absolutely right. They've got their own different tones about them, they've got their own strengths and weaknesses, and I'm excited to see how they behave. One thing that's typical behaviour is this man, Mike Horder, at the very front of the pack in qualifying. He's always the first car in the session when it comes to practice, and he's always the first car out when it comes to qualifying. I'm not sure if this is something that he always meditates or something that he just manages to do, but certainly makes it work, doesn't he, really, as getting to the front of the field is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect on a track such as this with that sort of second and third sector where it's ever so technical, that sort of last half of the lap. You do want to have clear air. Getting stuck behind a slower car will just cause you to hemorrhage huge amounts of lap time. So playing it smart, obviously you won't get the slipstream all the way down the start finish straight, but any gains you might make by following another car, you could easily lose through the corners. So he's playing it very smart, and it seems to get him good results because he is a driver that has been very consistently in those sort of top 5 positions.
Yeah, for sure. You know, he's so quick, and we know that he's got the pace to be able to stay up there as well. You know, he's not there by fluke. He's only 6 points behind Christopher Smith in the championship. He has got a podium to his name as well, of course, which you forgot last time out. He wasn't too pleased about that. Sebring, it was the second round of the season where Mike Horder ended up on the podium, and he had a great race indeed, and I know that he's going to be looking for more of the same here, hopefully. And as he heads his way down in towards turn 2 now, one of the hardest corners on the circuit, you can see the car really does glue itself to the inside line. Actually, he does a good job there. Dan McCauley's been off the road and has gone back into the pits. It looks like it might have been there because that's a very big spin by the look of it for Dan McCauley. Let's just have a quick look back while everyone's doing the laps. Whoa! Back end has gone for him, and he knows that that's ruined the tyres. So he's instantly going to get it off the road, jump it back to the pits, and that's going to be that. But it's going to be Mike Horder that's going to be first to get to the line. Just have a quick look, though, because Rob Sharp has done a purple sector 1 and a purple sector 3. Mike Horder's done purple sector 2, but he's the only driver through it at the moment. Let's see what Mr. Sharp can do. We spoke to him last time out as well. Rob's a great guy. He had an amazing battle. And I mean, 4th in the championship at the moment. He could very well nab 3rd here tonight if he gets a strong enough points finish from Simon.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like you say, in terms of where the championship goes, the amount of points you score, if he does take back 3rd, or overtake Simon for 3rd, it's going to be very difficult for Simon to take that back just because of how many points he score and how consistent he is as well in the championship. How many points he does tend to score. And I think just the most recent form as well, he's been very, very good. I've got to say, it might be difficult for Simon to take that position back.
It really will be. And that's, in a way, it's kind of what we've had with the points system. You know, we know that it's all very, very close together. So the drivers have to work extra hard if they're going to gain a lot of points over any rivals. That's a decent time by Mike Horder, 151.617. It's half a second faster than Goffin, 9 thousandths faster than Rob Sharp. Jacob Money goes 3rd fastest. Stuart Clark goes 4th fastest. Still all within about 0.4 of a second. John Barnes moves up there as well now. John Roberts, Matthias Tem, Kim Such. We've got Drew Fletcher coming across the line as well. Let's see how Drew gets on. And does he set a valid time? Doesn't look like it, unfortunately, but Fausto Pinto goes 8th in the Mercedes just behind. Another car jumps up there. That's Callum Brandt. Now, he's only got up to 6th place at the moment, but he's not in his stride yet. We know that this car takes a few laps to come good, doesn't it, Ed? It really has to get wound up. So does Callum, but towards the end of the race, we know just how quick he is. Look at that, though. Mike Horder already on to match his car. Another purple sector 1.
Yeah, we are seeing some very, very good sectors being set. But another thing that's very crucial around here, Chaz, a lot of the drivers were talking about it before the race and all throughout the week when they were practicing, is the off tracks around here. It invites you to push the limits that little bit too much, just on account of the fact that there aren't really any sort of gravel traps or anything like that on the outside of some of these corners. So the drivers are, I guess, lured into pushing the limits, and especially in qualifying, an off track does completely invalidate a lap time, which with the 15 minutes they have, not a lot of time, it can have a big effect on them.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to really get each lap nailed, haven't you? And that's what's been exciting about shortening these qualifying sessions. At the very start of the season, at the first season, they were half an hour, and then they went down to 20 minutes. And then for this season, they've gone down to 15 minutes, and it really has shaken up the qualifying because there was so long earlier for drivers to get 4 or 5 fast laps in with, you know, a slow lap and a sort of out lap and in lap either side, and get everything reset and back out and so on. Now, well, really, at some of the longer circuits that we've been to, we've seen drivers actually struggle to get a lap on the board at all because they've had to push and get a decent banker in. You know, they've not had any chance to just sort of let off and take it easy to get a banker on the board. They've had to push every single time, and that's what's been great about seeing the pace increase as well. I mean, the level is just rising and rising in this championship, and, well, we've seen it throughout qualifying, throughout every practice session, and it's just great fun to watch it. And, yeah, it means that the drivers have to push extra hard, but in turn makes it more exciting.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It does give us some bit of extra spice added to the mix. I mean, we saw it a lot at, like you say, the longer tracks, a place like Silverstone, I think, where Matthias Tem put in some great efforts in practice, but when it came to qualifying, he found himself in that mid-pack, and I think it's going to be one that you really want to avoid, especially at the start of the race, is if you're a quicker driver, avoiding that mid-pack, because in towards turn 1, we've seen it already in numerous other race categories, because of how much speed you take into it, the downhill nature of the braking zone as well, by the sort of length and I guess sort of radius of the corner, means that it is open up to a few chances for incidents and accidents. So you do need to basically get as far ahead from all of that as possible, especially on the opening lap.
Absolutely do. Lewis Ward has gone fastest, just under 0.4 of a second ahead of Mike Horder. Here's Mike's teammate Ben Gregory going for the line. It doesn't look like he puts a valid time on the board. There's a bunch of them all really close together, though. When you go down from John Barnes, Jacob Money, Stuart Clark and Paul Goffin, they're all within 1/10 of a second of each other. Then there's about another 1/10 back to Callum Brandt. Dan McCauley has done a purple sector on this lap. Stuart Clark has just improved 2 of his. Does he jump up the order? Doesn't look like it. Must have had an off-track somewhere around the lap. But Dan McCauley, purple sector 1 on this lap. Matthias Tem jumps up into 4th position now. Interestingly, sort of shaken up order aside from Lewis Ward, though. I mean, we've still got the usual guys near the front, but it's in a bit of a different order to what we'd expect, you know. We've got Matthias Tem doing a great job in 4th now. John Barnes up there in 5th ahead of Jacob Money. Here is Dan McCauley coming towards the end of a lap. Callum Brandt now goes up to 5th position, but that's still not enough. There are 2 rounds of the championship left after this, and that's 50 points. So nobody's going to be able to clinch the championship tonight and win it outright already. Even if Lewis Ward does get maximum points and Callum Brandt ends up with none this evening, he's not in a position to win the championship. Dan's going to get a bit of slipstream out the final corner here. His teammate working very well with him there. Let's see how they work together across the line as well. Dan McCauley goes second fastest, 0.08 of a second quicker than Mike Horder. That's beautiful stuff, and this is exactly why what you were saying before, Ed, about these teams and these 2 drivers, especially at Apex, becoming the drivers really to beat in the championship. It's teamwork like that. It's gorgeous to see, isn't it?
Yeah, they have been really, really strong, and like you say, it's, I think the benchmark times that they set for the rest of the field to try and follow. I want to see what Callum Brandt can do, the RD Simsport driver, if he might have Christopher Smith for company, helping him along, because to be fair, I think he'll need it. That Mercedes, the lap time there, it's not really going to be enough, not even maybe for a 3rd place at this rate, the way it stands. His pace hasn't quite certainly been there. Aston Martin's are going quite nicely as well, with Mike Horder, like you can see there, 3rd fastest. Matthias Tem as well, 5th fastest. Certainly in the mix. Rob Sharp, though, I was talking earlier about the Porsches maybe being a bit of a dark horse because of the tight and technical nature of the corners where this car really excels, but I wasn't expecting it to be this high up in 4th place. But credit to Rob Sharp, he's really got this car and the way it handles down to a fine art.
Yeah, he's really nailed it, hasn't he? And he's been the master of consistency as well as Rob, and pair that with the fact that he's just a really lovely bloke as well. He's a great all-rounder in this championship, is Rob. Bit of a shame to see the incident there between Drew Fletcher and I believe it was John Barnes. No, it was not John Barnes, apologies. It was his teammate Paul Gosling in the BMW. Drew was trying to just get the car back out of the way across the circuit so he could rotate and come back round. But unfortunately, wrong time, wrong place for Paul Gosling. Meant a very big shunt. Lewis Ward goes even faster. Wow, half a second clear. And he didn't even do that with slipstream. That's disgusting. Wow.
That is ridiculous stuff. Really, really quick lap time there.
Oh
and
my.
You have to say, he's looking a favourite for the title. The way things are going, his pace has been electric, not just in this qualifying session, but also in practice, to be fair to him. He's doing lap after lap quicker than anybody else. It just means that Callum Brandt, he has to find so much time now. He needs to find nearly a second to go onto pole position. And that's a huge amount to ask for.
Ben Gregory moves up into 12th place. He won't be too pleased with that. Christopher Smith down there in 11th as well. Mark Johnson down in 13th. There's a few drivers that have made their way further up the order than we've seen them before. And again, this is just what we love about this championship, isn't it, Ed? There's so much mixture going on, round after round in these grids. You know, I could never, ever tell you round to round what the grid is going to look like at the following race, because there's so many people that are sometimes in the top 10. They have a couple of rounds dipping outside of it, and then all of a sudden they'll come back and be in the top 5. But we've got an Apex Racing Academy 1-2 at the moment, taking up that front row. Callum Brandt is the highest placed RD Simsport car, and then his teammate Christopher Smith in the BMW is down in 11th place, so it's not going well for them at the moment. Callum Brandt, there you go. As soon as I say it, moves up to 3rd place. No slipstream. 1,000th of a second off Dan McCauley, though. It may not matter to some people that it's only 1,000th of a second, but still, it means that Callum Brandt is not as quick as Dan around there. And then he is only 7 thousandths actually quicker than Mike Horder. It's so close between those three. 8 thousandths between 2nd, 3rd and 4th on this grid. Let's see then who's going to come across the line next. It is going to be Christopher Smith in the BMW. That's got to be a good improvement. He moves up to 6th place. That's important for RD Sim Sport. Great salvage of that lap there. Ben Gregory is then the next car to make his way to the line, car 113. This isn't on a heat racing system as you can get on iRacing, so this session will allow the drivers to complete the fast lap that they're on. But the Aston Martin around the final corner here, Ed, they were saying that, well, some of them were saying it felt very understeery at Red Bull Ring, some of them saying it felt very oversteery. Could be interesting to see how it behaves around some of the long sweeping corners we get here at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that the Aston Martin tends to do all right with is, I think this first sector, I might struggle to put the power down coming through this slow right-hander, but it doesn't, you can see there, oh, well, a perfect example of that is Ben Gregory just over-rotates a little bit too much.
Yeah, Ben having a bit of a spin, and around he goes. I wasn't quite sure.
Like I've driven this car before. I knew exactly that. Just the way this car works, it doesn't like the slow speed corners, putting the power down. For some reason, I'm not sure what it is with the traction control system. It almost, when it kicks in, that then causes it to spin even more. And oh my word, it's just, I just don't understand how it keeps going on for him. It's especially Ben as well. I think he might not be quite at home with this car, but we did see it a few other times, not just singling out Ben, but a lot of other Aston Martins were struggling at the Red Bull Ring in towards turn 3.
Yeah, they were. It's definitely an intriguing prospect to see whether certain cars do become the problem child. And there have been certain details and tiny little niches that some of these cars have displayed to us over the course of the season where they have struggled, or whether certain cars have excelled as well. You know, the Mercedes has been great in the hands of Callum Brandt, but it's not really stood out with anybody else, unfortunately. We've got Heinz Mayer, Ralph Mayer and Fausto Pinto driving it, and Philip Hopley as well. But it's not really been groundbreaking for anybody else behind the wheel of it. So I'm intrigued to see whether anyone can sort of make it come good towards the end of the season.
I think Philip did have a really good race last time out at the Hungaroring, but that was the circuit that I think seemed to favour the Mercedes just a touch. I'm not sure if we'll be seeing that again here tonight. It's difficult though, this circuit, because it's got a bit of everything, so it could be a bit more of a great equaliser in terms of which cars are going to be quicker than the others. Just following Mydas Simulations through 4 a lap. See what he can do. I'm not sure if he's going to be on a properly push lap. I can't see any improvements in his sector time, so he might be gearing up for a quick push into the final few moments of this qualifying session.
Just realised we're getting a bit of a frame rate issue, so apologies for that, everybody. We're going to be dropping a lot for a few moments here. By the look of it, it's really gone to pot. But as qualifying ends, that was the final moment for Matthias Tem. Here comes Callum Brandt around the last corner now. Let's see what he can do. He's got a green middle sector. He only needs to find 20 thousandths to move ahead of Dan McCauley, but he does not. Ultimately, it does not get better for Callum Brandt, I'm afraid. And he's going to be starting behind the 2 Apex cars. And he's not got Simon Povey here this week to sort of put them off as well and help out in that battle at the front of the field. Around the final corner goes Christopher Smith right now. See what he does. As he crosses the line, doesn't look like any improvement. Oh, no, there was an improvement actually in general. No actual improvements in terms of individual sectors. Lewis Ward isn't going to improve either by the look of it unless he has a demon final sector now. I'll have to wait and see whether he makes it work. Around the final couple of corners he goes. You can hear him really rev it out there, couldn't you, Ed? He properly didn't want to change up a gear because then he'd just go straight back down again.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about getting the bounce in the car. Shifting down can induce a bit more over rotation just as the car shifts down the nose dips a bit more. And I think for Lewis Ward there, it's all about just keeping the car balanced. Does not improve on his previous time, but lap times he has been setting. I mean, that last lap was a 1 minute 50.99, so that still would have been good enough for pole position. And again, like you were saying, Chaz, 0 slipstream, bit of a ridiculous effort there. And I mean, now Callum Brandt's really going to be up against it, because the front row, Apex Racing Academy 1-2, and they can set the pace. They'll be in the Discord, they'll be talking to each other when Lewis is going to put the power down, and that's just going to leave Callum Brandt potentially a sitting duck to Mike Horder.
Yeah, that's it. It can very quickly change around, though. We've seen it before, haven't we? We've seen a sudden switch in the power dependent on track position in these races, as Christopher Smith is now, well, completing the session as such, and we're going to get our grid for round 8 of the championship. Lewis Ward is going to start on pole position with his teammate Dan McCauley alongside him. Callum Brandt and Mike Horder on the second row of the grid. RD Simsport and Boosted Simsport, a definite threat from there. Rob Sharp next up with Christopher Smith alongside him on the third row of the grid. Then we get Matthias Tem and John Barnes on the fourth row of the grid. Jacob Money and Stuart Clark may cut row 5 and round out the top 10, followed by Paul Goffin and Ben Gregory. We then have Mark Johnson and Paul Gosling on row 7, John Roberts and Rob Sutherland on row 8, Heinz Meyer and Tom Weston are 17th and 18th. We then have Fausto Pinto and Drew Fletcher rounding out the top 20, ahead of Kim Such and John Tusting. John surely will be moving forward from there throughout the course of the race. Ralph Mayer in 23rd, Philip Hopley is 24th, and he will be the last car to line up on the grid for this evening's race. No valid time on the board for Philip Hopley, unfortunately, but there is our grid ready to go. And, well, Ed, I mean, Apex can definitely work together here. We know that Mike Horder is very fast, but again, we've got a great mix of 4 different manufacturers in the top 5.
Yeah, it is absolutely wonderful to see. And then we've got, I think, let's have a look at that. Is that 5 manufacturers in the top 6 with Christopher Smith in the BMW as well? So every single manufacturer that the drivers can race in represented in the top 6 just shows that iRacing have done a very good job in terms of the balance of performance. It's something we do like to give them credit for when it's due. And to be fair, it does allow us to see what is like a proper GT4 grid with all the variety on display.
Here we go then. We've got only a couple of corners to complete as the effective green flag lap here. Dan McCauley starting second on the grid with his teammate right there in the glorious Apex Racing Academy McLaren 570S GT4s, and then behind the very bright pink and white Aston Martin of Mike Horder, and then the stealthy and gorgeous and very angry Callum Brandt Mercedes looking excellent there on the second row. Rob Sharp next up, then Christopher Smith as well. Look at this, they're all trying to bunch up together and push Lewis Ward and Dan McCauley and put the pressure on. But as they come around the final corner now, they are glued together side by side. Apex Racing Academy McLaren's at the front, and round 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge gets underway, and look at that. Instantly, oh, big contact there between Callum Brandt and Dan McCauley. Well, Lewis Ward had to cover it off on the right-hand side. Callum didn't need to move that far over and then hit the side of Dan. Dan dives to the left-hand side. Horder's gone to the inside. And look at that. Through the middle comes Matthias Tem. 3 wide in the middle of the pack there. And, well, Callum Brandt's got the better of Dan McCauley down his turn 1. Rob Sharp's on the right of Matthias Tem now. And now Christopher Smith's on the left. Behind them, they've got, I believe, is that John Barnes and Ben Gregory side by side. Jacob Money trying to go late on the brakes. Rob Sutherland, I think, made contact with someone there. And there's Paul Gosling. Is that around in the BMW? It is Gosling around. Apparently Kim Such is leading the race, but I think he's dived into the pits or something. Not quite sure what happened. Drew Fletcher and Kim Such had an issue at the back of the pack, but importantly, Callum Brandt has got ahead of Dan McCauley here, but that was certainly a controversial start, if anything, if not anything else, I should say, Ed.
Yeah, it looked to me that Callum actually got the better start than the pole sitter Lewis Ward there, and looked to go to the right-hand side. Got almost closed off, the door slammed shut in his face, so then he moves over to the other half of the circuit, the left-hand side, and then all of a sudden finds that Dan McCauley's, they're both just sort of trying to box him in, and he gets squeezed together, so he does very well to find a way past Dan McCauley throughout all of the carnage and melee, kept kept a cool head, but now he needs to make sure that Lewis doesn't break away, that he can stick with him, because that's basically how this race will either live or die by the terms of Callum Brandt, is keep him with him for these first few moments of the race, especially while the tyres are not in his favour.
Apparently there was some drama a bit further back here, actually, as cars had... Oh no, Drew Fletcher's lost it on the final corner on the exit. Just as the flag drops, Drew Fletcher has a moment, loses the rear end of the car, look, has a slide, catches Kim, and then Ralph Mayer has to take avoiding action. Real shame. And then we'll have a look here at how Callum Brandt got the lead, and well, to be fair, Dan moved all the way over to the outside. Oh, he has a bit of a blink in and out there as well. Suddenly Callum is back in front of him. So, one lap down, and there's a battle going on here for 4th place. This is Mike Horder muscling his way down the inside of Matthias Temp. Kim Such is apparently leading this race, which is quite an interesting dynamic, because it's been a while, although he's gone back into the pits now, so maybe that's going to reset it. But still, it does actually say that he's leading this race by about a minute and a half. Now, I've seen something similar to this before, you know, when we had a rolling start in a... Actually, no. It was a standing start in a touring car championship at Brands Hatch a long time ago on iRacing, and there was a humongous crash on the start-finish straight. But the safety car was called before some cars got to the line. And some of them went a lap ahead, and some of them went a lap behind, based on where the safety car was and when it was called out. And it was remarkable to see, because all of a sudden you had, like, I think there was 5 or 6 cars that were a lap ahead of everybody else that weren't normally front runners. Obviously they were the ones at the back that were behind. The safety car is on. Oh, is that Rob Sharp? Rob Sharp's in the wall, and Stuart Clark goes around him. Oh, and Stuart's hit the barriers as well. Hopefully the BMW isn't too damaged. He's still down the inside of Mark Johnson. Oh, goodness me. Rob Sharp, though, that is absolutely devastating. And that, well, like we were saying before, for the championship, that is very important. And that's how easy it is to do. I said he was the master of consistency. Must have jinxed him. And that is a big old whack, that is, for Rob Sharp. Big, big shame to see that.
All just from pushing a little bit too hard, isn't it? The car just losing traction, losing balance, over-rotating. Good avoiding action, though. But like you say, Stuart Clark getting a hefty whack into the wall. Not going to be good for his race. The car seems to keep on going. I don't know if it's... I didn't know if the turn 1 there is slightly crabbing or not. I mean, it seems to be not too bad, but there is always that little worry when you do have hefty hit on that, or at least on one side of the car. You can throw things off balance, but of course the BMW is fairly strong. A lot of these GT4s are. Of course, the drivers are entitled to a fast repair, one over the course of the hour you go racing for, and that will probably be taken at the first stop for Stuart Clark.
I mean, whether it's a joke or not, I think some people, if they're tuning in, will be thinking, what a drive this is by Kim Such. Less than 5 minutes into the race, and he's got a 36-second lead at the moment, which, unfortunately for Kim, is not true. He actually had an accident before he crossed the start-finish line, jumped to the pits, and strangely, the sim has calculated that he's now... Oh, there you go. Sorry, Kim, back to reality for a second there, mate. But yeah, it hadn't quite calculated what lap he was on, so I think he needed to cross the line a few times and sort of remind it where he was. Here is your lead gap, though, because Callum Brandt is now 2.5 seconds off the back of Lewis Ward, and he's got Dan McCauley all over him and throwing it up the inside as well. Dan puts his nose down the inside. He's a little bit late, but still, he hasn't really lunged from miles back. They're still very close together. Callum just breezes across the back of the car. Mike Horder has to get out of the brakes to not go into the back of him, and Dan McCauley now puts one of those nails into the coffin a little bit for Callum Brandt. Gets in front of him to help his teammate in the championship. Lewis Ward will be very pleased with that. And you've got to think as well, if it comes to the last couple of races of the season and Lewis has got a healthy advantage in the championship, for some of the help that Dan's been giving him, you'd expect if they were in a situation for Dan to win the race, Dan would be given that race win for sure.
I mean, certainly this is perfect for Lewis Ward. It's good that you mentioned the team play on display, because it's not really in Dan's best interests for his own race to battle Callum Brandt, because he's going to be slowing himself down. And also, Callum, as I say that actually, maybe it was in his best interest, because through that first sector, Dan McCoy's been able to build a bit more of an advantage to Callum Brandt, and Callum looks like he's struggling. He's probably going to be overtaken.
Oh, no.
Oh, muscled out of the way massively by Mike Horder. Matthias Tem sweeps on by, says, thank you very much. I'll take P3, get up into the podium places. But how far back is Mike Horder and Callum Brandt? I think they're still with him, you know, but that was a little bit interesting. I think there was a bit of netcode that got the two cars stuck together there.
Yeah, well, Callum's on the flashers now. He's not happy. He's got his teammate behind him, so that's luckily a bit of a safety buffer for him, but still, that was not an ideal scenario at all. Let's have a look at how it all happened. So this is going up the hill, and Mike just gets a great run, puts it down the inside, and fair play. It was a great move, but just on that curb, he just bounces wide. I mean, Callum was already flashing the lights when they were making contact with each other, which, to be honest, I think that's the least of your priorities, really. But I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with it. It wasn't like the move wasn't on or anything. You know, it was just a really opportunistic dive up the inside, and he just bounced wide on the curb, I'm afraid, and that was that. And now, I'm just hoping that Callum hasn't got damage on that car. Obviously, it wasn't on the front right, it was on the front left that would have hit the right rear of Mike Horder's car, but still, I think that was a very opportunistic move. We've actually got two boosted cars against two RD cars here, because we've got Ben Gregory. Actually, these are all the exact teammates as well. Mike Horder and Ben Gregory are boosted SimSport, and Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith, of course, RD SimSport. John Tusting has had a problem, I'm afraid, and gone back to the pits. This is in the Aston. Whoa! Oh, one way, then the other, and oh, bang, that's a big hit. Oh, the entire rear end comes off the car, and that is rather broken, I think it's safe to say there, Ed.
Yeah, just a little bit. Not really, but it's just not been a good evening for John Tusting. He didn't have the best qualifying, and all of a sudden with that little incident, that's probably put him out of the running for any sort of points. It's fair to say. Like I say, the back end completely fallen off the Aston Martin there. Intriguing that you mentioned the boosted SimSport and RD SimSport battle, all while the Fury SimSport car is leading this train and hoping to not really be involved in this little inter-team battle, because this would be Matthias's first shot at a podium, which he's certainly deserved over the course of the season. He's been very quick, but not really the luckiest driver out there, so hopefully I'm not jinxing him when I say this, but he's actually gaining on Dan McCauley.
Yeah, he's having a fantastic run, to be honest, is Matthias Tem, and he does deserve the pace, definitely deserve the pace. He deserved the result from it, at least. You know, he's been really, really strong all season. He just hasn't had the luck. Ben Gregory's just had a look down the inside of Christopher Smith, goes through in the Aston Martin, and Callum Brandt certainly not on full pace right now by the look of it. I think that last lap or so he was obviously being hounded a bit more. It was a 54-1 last time, so we'll see what it is when he comes across the line now. Ben Gregory has got that BMW filling his mirrors right now. Christopher Smith pushing him all the way down the start-finish straight. Mike Horder does his personal best of a 151.7, 152.4 for Callum Brandt. It was a 151.1 for Lewis Ward, so 1.3 seconds slower was Callum Brandt. I'm really hoping that's not down to damage, but you never know. The car could get fixed in the pits if there is damage to it, and we know how well he goes at the end of the race. But now we need to move forward a little bit more again, because Mike Horder finds himself on the attack once more, and this time it's Matthias Tem. And these two are certainly going to have a good old battle regardless of what goes on. Don't think Mike's going to try that move again up the hill, but he's certainly going well. Here's a battle further down the order. Paul Gosling trying to make his way back through the field now and overtake Ralph Mayer in the Mercedes BMW M4 against Mercedes AMG GT. He's going to move over to the right, then potentially over to the left. Look down the inside. Paul's just trying to put him off at this point. Careful through turn 4. It's very scary around there. Always looks like you can go a lot quicker into it when you get there, doesn't it? But then all of a sudden you find yourself on a curb.
Yeah, it's such a trick. I mean, every single corner on this circuit is just tricky. It's never been one that I've really gotten along with, because it's so technical, so demanding. But to be fair, it's so fun when you do, or if you do, get it right. Rewards good careful driving as well, especially through these corners. It's all about getting the lines right first and then pace through the corners second. Don't necessarily want to attack the corners around here, because it is a circuit that it's quite notorious for high tyre wear as well, so that could be a factor later on into the race. We know that the McLaren is fairly aggressive and abrasive on its rubber, so that could come into the favour of Aston Martin's likes of Mydas Simms, Mike Horton as well, Callum Brandt, who desperately needs to have at least a podium finish to keep his hopes of a championship fight alive. But we were talking earlier about Mydas closing in on the back of Dan McCauley. He's now right up behind him, less than half a second just as they went into the braking zone. So this could be really intriguing now to see how this fight occurs.
Yeah, it's really erupted, hasn't it, to be honest? It's suddenly just come out of nowhere. Lewis Ward has a 7-second lead in this race now, so I'm sure that he'll be happy if Dan can hold these guys up or have a battle with them for at least a couple of laps. If he, that's even saying if he loses the place anyway. You never know, he might just hold on to it. Simon Povey in the chat has just very rightly pointed out that Callum could also have damage from that initial contact with Dan as they crossed the line and started the race. Because it was on that front left, wasn't it? So he could have had another consecutive hit second time round. And we've got Simon Price in the chat. He says, no hedgehogs and Mr. Tusting out. This is what I get for arriving late. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not been a good night for Spontex CDM Esports, but Simon having issues with his wheel. Gary not able to make it due to work commitments. Now we've got John Tusting as well, actually, in the chat. Already, sorry to see it's not been your night. John, he says, I've done 585 laps of Daytona in the LMDH and half an hour in this was not enough time to reprogram for this old man. Understandable, because when you've got the grip of an LMDH car and then you jump in one of these, it does feel like this is like a fishbowl that's been covered in oil and then rolled down a hill.
Well, speaking of the LMDH, though, we did, of course, recently have the Daytona 24. I don't know if you're watching it, Chaz, but there was an amazing battle right at the end for the LMP2 category.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you what, that's probably one of the best finishes for a Daytona 24 I've seen in quite a long time.
Absolutely, I think it's been very, very exciting. There's been lots of good moments from the race, to be fair, and it's interesting to see the Acura GTP car taking the win as well. It's just a shame that they have to sort of nudge the LMP2s down by so much to, keep them under the performance of these new GTP cars. But I think in time, it'll get more and more exciting, and well, it's just great to see the new cars out there. It's all the big brands together, top end of the field. That's what we like to see. We do not have Andy Marston tonight either. Yes, that's very true, Mr. Penny. Ryan has pointed out that we do not have him, or of course Ryan Penny, who is usually our biggest mover in the field. Now, biggest mover so far is actually Ben Gregory. He's gained 6 places from 12th on the grid to go up to 6th. I think by now Ryan Penny would have probably gained about double that, wouldn't he, to be honest, Ed? We've seen just how good Ryan is through the field. He's very, very quick indeed. And, oh no, there's been an off for Heinz Mayer. Oh, that's big damage. Big damage to Mercedes, and that's going to be the end of his race. And look, turn 4 strikes, rips the entire front end off the car. And luckily the others don't get collected in anything, but that is horror show for Heinz Mayer. And this is horror show for Dan McCauley right now. He wants to, well, not see this in his rearview mirror, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating, I think, for Mydas Simms, because where he's faster is the areas of the circuit where you're least likely to make an overtake work. In that sort of second and third sector, he's all over the back of the McLaren, but can't really make it work. Now, coming on to the final corner, you can see just how close the Fury SimSport Aston Martin is, and going down the start-finish straight. The McLaren is usually faster in a straight line. He didn't have a lot of slipstream, but I think the turbocharged nature of that Aston Martin, what on earth was going on there? McCauley and Tem banging doors, but I think up the inside, you're going to see the Aston Martin take second place now.
Oh, there's a bit of red mist descending there, but Matthias Tem gets through. Very scary stuff. Door to door as they go down the start-finish straight. This is very feisty. Callum Brandt's watching this as well. Needs to not get carried away there. Mike Horder's actually dropped back as well. Callum Brandt has overtaken Mike Horder down the start-finish straight while all of this was going on. And this is a fantastic fight already between 4 of the very finest drivers, because he's had a few knocks and bangs over the course of these opening few minutes. And, well, I say few minutes, there's been 15 minutes of the race gone already. Is Mike going to send it down the inside again in some sort of retaliation to say, look, not Mike, sorry, Callum, just to say, look, you sent it on me, I'm going to send it on you. Let's have a look back at how Callum overtook Mike. And it's just going to be a strong run out the final corner. Or has Mr. Horder got a slowdown penalty? Either way, here's the contact. Doesn't doesn't need to happen, does it? It really doesn't need to. I mean, I'm all for, you know, trying to get in your opponent's heads and maybe squeeze them over to one side a bit, but there wasn't a lot of room there for either of them, to be honest. And, well, you would want to sort of hint and creep over a little bit back towards the left-hand side. I think Dan wanted to just hold him to the wall as long as possible, but it just didn't pay off, I'm afraid.
I think as well, looking at the bigger picture, Dan doesn't really need to fight with Mydas too much. The race that he's having to focus on most for the sake of the team is against RD Simsport and against Callum Brandt. For the sake of his teammate, he can let Mydas 10 through. That's perfectly fine, because then you've got one less plate to juggle. If he clears off down the road, you need to focus on the cars that you're racing against in the championship. And I think maybe that started to settle into Dan's head. As soon as that contact happened, I think he did almost give himself almost a reality check there and thought, wait a minute, I don't want to throw this away and give Callum any sort of gift in this race. But now he's starting to focus more on the cars behind rather than, I think, Mydas, who's seemingly stretching his legs now as the gap just creeps over the 1 second barrier for the first time.
Yeah, Mydas is having a great race, though. He started 7th on the grid in this one, and he's now up into 2nd position. Doing very, very well. And then we've got Ben Gregory. Fausto Pinto's actually tied with Ben Gregory for the most places gained now. He started 19th on the grid. He's up into 13th position at this moment in time. You get points for the top 20 in this championship, so Kim Such, despite the earlier drama, is actually on course to score a point at the minute, but Rob Sharp, I'm sure, will try and have something to do with that. Philip Hopley and John Tusting both out of the race. Heinz Mayer has been getting the car repaired in the pits as well for quite some time now. We were going to look at John Roberts a minute ago because he was battling with Paul Goffin, but Paul has overtaken him and then disappeared over the horizon. So the SRM Racing Team A McLaren going quite well, despite losing 3 places since the race started. Paul trying to make up for any points that might not be salvaged with Andy not being here. And that's what's interesting about making it a team game as well. You know, we've not just got the Drivers' Championship to think about here, Ed. We've got to think about the teams as well, and it's always great to have that added element to it, because you could have a driver that wins the championship, but a teammate that's not quite up there or at the same level, and, you know, a team that's more consistent, maybe finishing 3rd and 4th all the time, they could be the ones in the end that actually take the team's honours.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it all about consistency in the Drivers' Championship. Lewis Ward consistently on the podium every single race is what's got him where he is now, leading the championship with what could be a very healthy advantage into the final 2 rounds of the season. Tyres 10, though, I'd say really impressed by him. His qualifying, maybe not the best, but then again, a lot of drivers did seem to struggle on around a circuit like this. It's probably the easiest one to struggle most in qualifying, be it with traffic or be it with off-tracks plaguing you. So for now, Matthias is really impressed me with how he's been able to carve his way through and extend a bit of an advantage to Dan McCauley, who I will assume will start racing in his mirrors a lot more now with how close Callum Brandt is to the back of him.
Yeah, absolutely, and let's not forget Lewis Ward, our race leader in this, championship leader as well. He's finished on the podium in every race so far this season. He's got an 11.4, now 11.6 second gap over Matthias Thames, so regardless of what Matthias can do in the later stages of this race, Lewis is already in a very, very comfortable position right now. And it's looking good, though. It's still a very intriguing race because there's quite the train here. Dan McCauley, Callum Brandt, Mike Horder, Ben Gregory and Christopher Smith. Jacob Money's not far off the back of this either, so if they start fighting, he's definitely going to be on the scene. Then we've got John Barnes and Mark Johnson, who's made his way into the top 10. And then Stuart Clark as well. Even after that big whack into the wall earlier, that BMW is still going strong.
Yeah, what I'm really impressed by, though, is just how the complexion of the race has changed so much. At one stage, you were thinking, oh, does Callum Brandt have damage? He seems to be slower. Dan McCauley looks to be breaking away from the pack. Then all of a sudden, Matthias Thames comes through, reels him in. And then it's Dan McCauley who looks to have the damage, who looks to be slower. And Callum Brandt suddenly appears to be maybe the fastest of this train for second place. So it's very quickly all chopping around. And that's the beauty of these GT4 cars and the way they race together, is that you can never really be certain which car is probably the fastest at any given moment. And the way that they change as the race goes on, the different characteristics coming through, the different ways that they use the tyres, it just all really makes it feel a lot more alive. And I think that's something that a lot of series miss in terms of iRacing, the way they bounce the cars, is that you can usually tell one way which car's going to be the fastest, but at the moment in the GT4s, just like in real life, it can change as the race progresses, and at the moment it does look like the Mercedes is reeling in and closing down on that McLaren.
And here's a BMW closing down on an Aston Martin. Paul Gosling trying to overtake Tom Weston for 16th position here. A little bit further down the order, Paul recovering after the spin on the opening lap. I think he got contact from behind. James Holman in the chat, or Jaime Luis Holmano, as I should call him, saying keep an eye out for people trying the one stop. Now, that is brave, but it's also not completely out of the question, I don't think, because we're what? Nearly halfway through the race, and we've not had a single car have a scheduled stop yet for tyres or fuel. Normally, we've had at least one or two in by the 20-minute mark. Drew Fletcher's in, but I think he's got damage. I think he's had a bit of a problem. There is the fast repair going on. I think he's just going to take fuel while he's in there. And, well, I say that, and Matthias Tem now comes into the pits. He doesn't want to be watching his mirrors anymore. He wants to crack on with this. Let's see what Dan McCauley and Callum Brandt get up to down the straight, though, Ed, because now the pit stops are beginning. This is where drivers' heads start to go 10 times the speed, trying to calculate who's going to be where and when.
Yeah, I think Matthias was just coming to the pits not to give any slipstream to Dan McCauley and help him out with the fuel saving game. Because, of course, if there's one thing that Apex Racing Academy are very good at, it's managing the race, managing the fuel, and having the shortest stops out of everybody else. Callum Brandt needs to focus on trying to upset this rhythm and force Dan to use as much fuel as possible. Don't let him get any respite. And maybe if the opportunity arises, try for a little look up the inside. But you can just see now where the cars are different, where they can make up the lap time, and coming through sort of that downhill right-hander, the gap really does emerge. And then through this longer right-hander, all of a sudden the Mercedes closes down a bit more. He's wonderful to watch, but where has Matthias Tem come out? Is he in traffic? He seems to have found a little bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
And that might have big effect on where these drivers will all find themselves after the first round of pit stops.
They are the positions, and you can see the yellow car is the one we're looking at. Look at where Lewis Ward is in comparison to the number 2 on that map there, which is Dan McCauley over here. He's got a great gap right now as Lewis Ward, 13.9 seconds, and he's going to be really happy with that. And hats off again to Dan McCauley, because he's been battling hard and he's not been sinking, has he? He's not lost a load of places. He's only lost the one to Matthias Tem, and it's not like it wasn't without a hard fight either. Certainly feisty and very scary stuff. Let's see who comes in this time. Any more pit stops? I think the Aston Martins may be the first cars to blink, based on Matthias Tem coming in first. Nobody else actually coming in inside the top 10 by the look of it. Anyone going to prove me wrong? No. No cars in the top 10 in this time. Fausto Pinto's got Paul Goffin and John Roberts behind him. 3 different manufacturers, 3 different teams. Scalant Pro Driving, SRM Racing Team A, and then Boosted Motorsports, John Roberts in the Ukrainian Sukhoi Su-27 P1M flanker livery. The digital camouflage from the electronics upgrades that the flankers received later on in their life in the Ukrainian Air Force. And now John is hoping that he stays very stealthy behind these two as they battle in front of him. But Paul Goffin definitely not stealthy in that McLaren. It's a very bright livery in the SRM colours with the day-glow yellow flashes and gradients all over it. But tell you what, we speak about drivers improving all the time, Ed, and I have to say Fausto Pinto, he has a few scary moments every so often, or he did in Season 1 anyway, but he's really improved, hasn't he, in this season? He's doing a fantastic job. He actually got some good results in Season 1 as well, a top 5 at Daytona, thanks to the incredible top speed of the BMW. But here in the Mercedes, you know, he's been a real strong competitor at times.
Yeah, he has. He has been really good. And fair to say, it's good to see that the drivers have been able to develop themselves, develop their racecraft, and we've been seeing some excellent drives from all people this season. Not just the ones that have been here from the Season 1 and seen them develop, but as well some of the newcomers, they've developed and come on strongly as well. It has been really good to see. It does give you a lot of hope, doesn't it, Chaz, for the future of the SRM community and the GT4 challenge going forward. Having a little look as well, just through the field later back, we've just had Matthias Tem coming for his pit stop, and he's had to overtake Ralph Meyer. Hopefully he hasn't lost too much time as Dan McCauley comes into the pits, as does Lewis Ward from the lead of the race. So that's going to be a real focus for our attention now, I think, Chaz, is the battle in the pits, where Dan McCauley is going to find himself coming out.
Yeah, well, there is Lewis Ward at the end of the pit lane. We'll see where he comes out as well. Will he have traffic around him? He's taking tyres by the look of it. Look at the way that they've positioned the cars as well. So they're already turned slightly to the left-hand side for when they leave the pit lane. There's Drew Fletcher going past. Pretty much the whole field going past Lewis Ward. He comes back out of the pit lane. Although, no, Drew Fletcher was nearly a lap down, actually. Lewis has come back out of the pits in 8th place. So he's not lost a massive amount of time, but importantly for him...
Tim's just going to come through here, Chaz. This could be very close in towards turn 1.
Oh, there goes Dan as well out of the pit lane. Matthias Tem is there on the right. Dan McCauley is there on the left. And Matthias Tem is still in front. Dan slams on the brakes, but he's going to be on fresh rubber now. Now, we didn't see whether Matthias Tem took tyres as well, but there was only about 0.3 of a second, sorry, 0.5 of a second between their two pit stops. But Dan McCauley was in the pit lane for, wow, 6 seconds more, actually. 8 seconds more than Matthias Tem, and he somehow made it work, and he's only that far behind him. So, don't know quite what's happened to sort of negate any times between the two of them, but there should be about 6 seconds further apart right now, but they're not. It's 1.4 seconds.
Matthias Tem did encounter a bit of traffic on that lap as well. He had to overtake a few cars, so that could have been a factor. He did come out in a slight amount of traffic. He had a bubble, but then quickly caught up to those ahead of him. But as well, I'm astounded at how quickly that pit lane time is for Matthias Tem. 46 seconds spent in between the sort of pit entry cones and pit exit cones, but I don't know how that's possible, because if you look at how long he was in the pits for,
he was only there
in terms of stationary time, it's the same as everybody else. So I'm not sure if that is accurate. That can't be. Surely not.
No, it probably isn't. I mean, that's, 23.9 seconds stationary for Matthias Tem, 24.4 for Dan McCauley, but yet it says Matthias was in the pits for 8 seconds less. No, I'm not having it. Callum Brandt still leads this race then, temporarily. Christopher Smith in second place. Lewis Ward now overtaking all the other lot. We'll have a look at where these guys come out, actually, because there's Mike Horder, Jacob Money, Ben Gregory as well. Just round the final corner now is Matthias Tem and Dan McCauley. There's Ben Gregory getting going. There's Mike Horder getting going. They now pile out of the pit lane. And where is Dan in all of this? Dan's going to go through.
I've just noticed, are Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith going to make it to the half-hour mark on one pit stop?
Oh,
because they haven't came into the pits yet. We've gone for what? Is that what, 29 minutes gone?
Yeah, James Holman says RD are both definitely one stop in.
It's going to come through into the pit lane at about bang on the half-hour mark, Chaz.
Oh my goodness me. Can they make it work? That's the question. Can they make it work? Because as far as I remember, I haven't put anything in there to say you have to do.
There's nothing on the rules.
No? Limited, yeah, it's just limited to 40% fuel to encourage pit stops. So
I think they're encouraged, they're not mandatory.
Yeah.
Oh my word. This could be a masterstroke.
It's not 2 mandatory pit stops. It's just the norm has become 2 stops. So 30 minutes and 5 seconds left. When does he cross the line? Because the line's here somewhere. Half an hour, now. 29.59, 22 seconds under. So he's just done over half the race by 2 seconds. Right. Let's see whether they make this work, because if they can, this is going to be a massive shock to the system for Apex Racing Academy. But let's not forget, they are going to be on shattered tyres for the rest of this. Here comes Lewis Ward now down the start-finish straight. He's got Drew Fletcher a lap down in front of him. We know that they're not going to be out when Lewis Ward is. They're probably going to drop behind the cars ahead of them as well, let's not forget, because they're going to fill right up. They're not going to sort of take the minimum amount before a pit stop. John Roberts comes in the pits as well. This is Kim Such next up. Then Matthias Tem and Dan McCauley. Callum Brandt is moving. Christopher Smith is moving. And this is actually going to be close, you know, between Callum Brandt and Dan McCauley. Once again, he's on the inside line. Dan's going to turn in. And Callum's got the inside line, but can Dan get the cutback? These two have been fantastic to watch so far this season, and once again we get them side by side. Christopher Smith is not in a battle with anybody behind, but he is between the 2 boosted SimSport Aston Martins. Callum Brandt needs no fuss here. He runs a little bit deep. Dan McCauley tries to get the cut back down the inside, and there's contact once again between the two of them. But still, it's all fair in love and war. Dan McCauley gets a great run out of turn 3, side by side, round the outside of Callum. I think Callum's letting him go. Yeah, he doesn't want to fight it too hard up there to turn 4. He knows there's no point battling that hard at this point now. If he can get this car to the end on what he's just put in it, which is not a lot more than everybody else around them, then that will be an ultimate masterstroke. Quick recap then though, Ed. Lewis Ward, Matthias Tem, Dan McCauley, top 3 at the moment. 16 seconds Lewis Ward's race lead. It all looks like it's going swimmingly for now, but we've got a big question mark over it.
This could be a huge, huge momentum shift in this race if they can make the one-stop work. I mean, you could imagine that they put in the practice beforehand. A lot of sessions have been put up in the space between the last round at the Red Bull Ring and this. So this could be where the practice has paid off. We did hear, didn't we, Chaz, in the YouTube chat, a mention of a one-stop. If there is any circuit that you could do it, it'd probably be at the Red Bull Ring because of the sort of like twisty nature of this circuit, the downhills as well, where you can save a bit more fuel by lifting off. Let the car just sort of get taken down by gravity. Tell you what though, this would be just beyond belief if they can make a one-stop work. Unprecedented, I think, is the word we have to use for the SRM GT4 challenge.
It would be absolutely unheard of, wouldn't it, for them to make it work? And I mean, they've done half an hour of the race on it, so they very well could make it work. It just depends whether they can go flat out and keep the pace up throughout and then manage to make it to the end on said pace. Because let's not forget, they still have to make up 16 seconds on Lewis Ward. Pit lane time for him last time was 53 seconds, according to our software. And well, I mean, it's not unheard of, really, to make up 16 seconds. But I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. That was a spin there for Drew Fletcher. He gets going again, though. SRM Racing Team B. Drew might actually feature on my YouTube channel in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. Callum Brandt in 4th place, though, is now fallen away from Dan McCauley. That is safe to say. He's got Mike Horder behind him once again. These two had a fantastic battle earlier on. Then you've got Christopher Smith and Ben Gregory fighting there as well. Ben Gregory catching up to Christopher Smith after the pit stops. Christopher in the BMW came out between the two boosted SimSport cars. And what a fantastic race this is. So many battles that are going this way and that way here, Ed. This is awesome to watch. Ben Gregory throws it up the inside of Christopher Smith, delays both of them massively. Chris gives him all the room in the world. Fair racing. But again, is that just a sign that RD know they don't need to fight this too hard at this point? Because all they'll do is cost themselves time in the long run. He could just sit behind Ben now and fuel save. Because let's not forget, Callum Brandt had himself in a position where he was behind Dan and could fuel save. So if he sits behind Mike Horder and fuel saves now, well, that's them to the end, easy.
Yeah, and I mean, all of a sudden it goes from being an Apex Racing Academy 1-2 to now Apex Racing Academy 1-3, and potentially even by the end of the race, it's going to be an RD SimSport 1-2. This could be a huge turn-up for the books, not just in terms of the team's championship, but also the drivers, because it looked for all the world that Lewis Ward was going to get one hand on the trophy after tonight. His pacing qualifying was ridiculous. He's extended a massive gap even before the first round of pit stops. But all of a sudden, how things can change in the space of about 5 minutes. Now we're starting to talk about Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith being a 1-2 finish.
It could very well happen if this strategy works for them, but the thing is, it's about seeing how the cars behave in the later parts of the race. Don't forget, everyone else will go in and probably get tyres as well and get fuel and be absolutely flat out for their final stints. So it depends how much the extra pit stop offsets them by. We've seen it before in certain levels of motorsport where people have saved enough in an endurance race to not have that final stop, but because of the pace compromise to save that final stop, it's not worked out in the end. So I'm excited to see if there are any other elements of this that we haven't considered yet. But Lewis Ward leads the race, Matthias Tem second, Dan McCauley third, this man Callum Brandt in 4th place, and his teammate Christopher Smith of RD SimSport giving us an amazingly entertaining race of intrigue. It's not all just about door-to-door battling, it's strategies and outsmarting your opponents. And I think that is one of the best things about longer races like this. We get to see these strategies come to life and see them go head to head as well. It's not just everybody pits at the same time and comes out again. You know, those sorts of pit stop races, there's no point. You may as well just do a sprint race at that point. But I think it's great to see this. And look again, he's not fighting it too hard there. He was not squeezing Mike Horder down the inside, was he?
He wasn't actually on that last lap. Callum Brandt took 2/10 out of Dan McCauley, so game on in terms of third place, isn't she? There could be a battle. Probably just choking on something there just before the final round of pit stops, potentially for Dan McCauley.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you mid-food there. Dan McCauley will be watching his mirrors, though, and waiting for that gap to get bigger, because I think if he knows, and he's had any communication that those guys are going to be doing one stop, him and Lewis know they need to absolutely gun it now. They're not going to be just holding them up. They're not going to be playing games. They're just going to absolutely cane it, and he's going to hope that Mike Horder puts Callum under pressure, and that's exactly what Mike's going to be doing, because I think even he knows that they might be able to one-stop it as well, so he's going to do everything he can to upset that rhythm. And I think to be fair, actually, Ed, here's a thing we've not thought about. The pit stops for everybody else were very, very late on. I know that the pit lane time is quite long here at the Hungaroring, but based on how tiny and minuscule... Oh, Mark Johnson's around. But based on how tiny and minuscule these second stops are going to be for a lot of these drivers, it might not be much of a difference.
I think here at Hungaroring, the pit speed limiter is quite severe, though, so we'll have a look and see how much time you lose. I think the delta time is fairly big around here.
Oh, that was a little bit messy. That Mark Johnson went off at the chicane, and then next corner in, he made the apex. Although, to be fair, Stuart Clark's let him back through. In my eyes, I thought Mark had maybe come across him there and not left enough room down the inside, but fair play to Stuart, great sportsmanship. He lets Mark back in front, and it's, at the end of the day, only a first glance that I've come to that conclusion, so apologies, Mark, if that seems unfair. We'll always look at it again if needs to, but to be honest, Stuart's given him the place back and compromised his own race, so fair play. Dan McCauley must have compromised his own race somewhere as well, though, because all of a sudden Callum Brandt is right back with him again now. That's nightmare fuel for Dan McCauley. And can we just say, actually, at this point, Ed, I know you might be a bit biased here, but go for it. Matthias 10, what a drive he's having, considering how topsy-turvy his season has been up to this point. I think, hasn't he finished 7th in, like, 5 races or something? Yeah, he's finished 7th in 5 of the 7 races so far. For one of them, he finished in 4th place, and then for another one, he finished way down in, like, 12th or something. But other than that, he's had 5th place finishes pretty much all season. And now he finds himself in not just a podium spot, but a good one as well.
Yeah, 2nd place, and as the laps go by, it looks more and more assured that that is going to be where he finishes, because he's been building and growing the advantage ahead of Dan McCauley, who's more increasingly worried by the cars behind rather than Matthias in front. And I mean, looking at the lap times, he's doing exactly what he needs to do to secure this 2nd place spot. All the while, of course, Lewis Ward is streaking away, but it's no sense talking about him because he is just on another level around this circuit, it seems. The only thing that can stop him is the pit stop question, the 1-stop versus the 2-stop. Yeah, Matthias, he has been brilliant. He's been a driver that we earmarked right at the start of the season, where he put it on the front row in qualifying to be one driver that could upset the balance of the SRM GT4 Challenge, upset some of those established names, the likes of Lewis Ward, and of course Simon Povey, who were ever so impressive last season. And I think he is getting his just rewards right now, Matthias. Finally, the one time where a race has not had a bit of rotten luck going his way, he can show his talents, and what talents they are as well. Up in 2nd place and a commanding lead now over Dan McCauley.
Just looking at the potential pit stop times, you know, towards the end of the race, if they only are in the pits for a couple of seconds, then you're going to be talking about 34 seconds pit lane time by the look of it. And I think if Lewis Ward keeps this pace up, he's not going to be far off clearing that from these guys. You know, he's nearly at the 20-second mark. Mr. Biggles in the chat asking if anyone will one-stop. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith, it's been confirmed by the team, will be one-stopping in this race. They made it to half an hour and 2 seconds of the race complete by the time they crossed the line. when you factor into that the sort of half green flag lap and then the start of the race and the battles early on where you've not really got a chance to fuel save, compared to a shorter second stint where you do have the opportunity to fuel save, I think they're going to be in a strong position here if this works out. But at the same time, Lewis Ward is absolutely flying at the front of the field, and he's just on the brink of having the pace enough to completely negate that gap, isn't he, Ed?
Absolutely, but it's all down to just if he can keep this up. I mean, his last lap was just a tenth slower than his best over the entire race. He is putting the burners on like you wouldn't believe. Lewis Ward really motoring along nicely, but you do start to worry and wonder, is it going to be all for naught? He's putting all of this effort in. He's giving himself the best chance of coming through from the pit stops, still in the lead of the race. But is he using a bit too much fuel while doing so? Is that maybe going to cause him to have a slightly longer stop all of this time he's been putting in to build an advantage? Oh dear, Chaz. These are all questions that we can't really answer right now. They'll have to be answered for us in the next 15 minutes.
And what a 15 minutes it is going to be. So make sure you stay with us on Chaz Draycott Media to catch the end of this race. The headlights are on. It's getting dark here at the Hungaroring. A quick word as well to say thanks to our wonderful sponsors for this championship. We have Crockery Direct, Orris Digital, Blinds to Go and Mydas Simulations. We are very grateful to have them on board as sponsors for this championship. They do wonderful things to support us. And of course Orris Digital as well, which you'll see in the top right of the screen, will be the sponsor for the Sim Racing magazine event Daytona Classic on the 28th of February in the evening. 2.4 hours of Daytona in the classic LMP2 HPD Acura ARX 01C. We're going to have the GT1 cars, the Aston Martin DBR9, Chevrolet Corvette C6R, and the BMW Z4 GT3, all in their own classes. 2.4 hours worth of racing. It's going to be epic fun. Myself, Chaz Draycott, and the wonderful Ed May will be in the commentary box for that. But right now, it's go time here at the Hungaroring, and well, all eyes are on Callum Brandt really, because we know that Lewis Ward is doing everything he can. He's nearly got 20 seconds over Mydas Tem now, and he's still doing 1:51.6s. He's gaining a few tenths per lap on these guys as well. I just don't know if it's going to work or not. It seems like it should, but it all depends on the length of these final stops, I think, Ed.
Any other race, it probably would, but look how much he's lifting. Any other race, it would work, but I don't know if it will, just because of how in tune with the car on the track Lewis Ward is at this moment in time. Any other driver up in front, if Simon Povey was up there battling with him, slowing him down, maybe this would work out for Callum Brandt. But when you just see the lap times that Lewis Ward is putting in, the gap that he is building every single lap that goes by, you can't help but think, has Callum Brandt got enough in terms of the time he's going to save by not taking that extra pit stop? It's a real head scratcher, because for me, I think that Lewis Ward is probably going to spend about 6 seconds stationary in his pit box. That might mean it's a 40-second pit lane time, maybe 35.
Yeah,
like you say, Chaz, the delta, I don't know if it's going to be enough. They could be racing in towards turn 1, you know.
This is excellent, though, just to see these three as well. 3 drivers that are right up there in the championship. Dan McCauley, Callum Brandt and Mike Horder, all throwing absolutely everything at this. You've got Mydas Tem just up the road. Christopher Smith behind. John Barnes, by the way, going well in car 777 P7 at the moment. He's got Jacob Money right behind him. He's currently just about holding him off, but Jacob's been doing a good job. Actually, no, John overtook him recently. Sorry. He's done this down in towards turn 1. Oh, look at that. Lovely late on the brakes, moving around. Says thank you very much. Jacob gives him loads of room, though, and tries to go for the cutback, but it doesn't work. Nice, fair racing between the pair of them. Here are 2 other Boosted drivers. Boosted Motorsport B's Paul Gosling and Boosted Motorsports John Roberts in the Aston Martin, chasing down the BMW V8 versus inline 6, I believe. I don't think it was a V6 in that version of the M4. I'm pretty sure it was a inline 6 at that point. Single turbocharger. Big beefy block, similar engine to the one they used in the M4 GT3, and oh, that's Fausto Pinto off the road. Oh. Rejoining in a bit of a scary manner, but manages to get back on with the job. He's now not the biggest mover in the field. It's actually Ralph Mayer, but I think if you had to count it, He's gained the same places as Mydas Tem, and because Mydas Tem has done that, but further up the order, he would be classified as the biggest mover in the field, I'm afraid, for Ralph. But still, it's a great highlight of what Mydas has done, and after the season he's had, we've been going on about it all race, but honestly, he really does deserve it. Got Stuart Clark in the pits. Not quite sure if he's just out of sync
Chaz,
based on that. Hello.
he might deserve it, but one thing that could come to fruition is the fact that while, of course, Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith might not get first and second, they will likely still get second and third. So that could suddenly shift Mydas Tem heartbreakingly outside of his podium position.
It might be, yeah. It very well might do. So we need to see exactly what they can do about this potential one-stop strategy, because admittedly, Ed, don't think there is anything they can do, to be honest with you.
No. The only thing they could do is be Lewis Ward and be driving about a second faster than everyone else, but not really. I don't think anybody else can do that right now apart from Lewis.
Well, he needs to just get his foot down and crack on with it. He did a 151.19 last time round, and his fastest lap of the race is a 151.10. He was 0.8 of a second, 1.4 seconds quicker than Dan McCauley, 0.8 of a second quicker than Mydas Tem. He's absolutely flying. Like, absolutely flying is Lewis Ward. He is throwing everything
Last lap
at
a full
this.
second faster.
Oh, now here's an interesting development. Mike Horder ahead of Callum Brandt. So he's going to have cost Callum a little bit of time in making the move, but you could see that Callum didn't want to fight it too hard, and he's not going to want to either right now, and it's maybe going to be a bit frustrating for him to not be able to push, because the more they fight, the more they'll hold each other up. He may as well just sit behind Mike Horder now, save a bit more fuel in some slipstream, and lift and coast where he can. This is where it's going to be tough for him now, where it's going to teeter over the edge of saving fuel and going ham. Paul Gosling then in the pits. Fausto Pinto in the pits. We're getting our second stops in now. And for some of them, we may not get a second stop at all. This has very much become an intriguing narrative. I'm jiggling both my legs here at my desk in excitement, waiting for this to all unfold in a way that we can fathom. Because until it happens, Ed, we don't know. We can just sit here speculating for half an hour like we almost have done.
We always do. We love a little bit of speculation here. It's what we do best as commentators. And it is good fun just to imagine, concoct all these different scenarios in our heads and just think of how the race might unfold. Lewis Ward, though, is doing all that he can do to make sure that that extra pit stop does not matter at all. And I think as the laps go by, as that gap grows bigger and bigger, he might be able to do just enough. The real question, I think, will then shift to be, can Callum Brandt finish in second place? Because that's going to be good for his championship to essentially lessen the blow, so to speak.
Yeah, damage limitation is going to be the aim of the game if he doesn't beat Lewis. And to be honest, if he does beat Lewis, he really needs to have his teammate Christopher in second place as well to open up that gap. Because if he does finish ahead of this number 97 car, first and second that is, he will only gain 3 points on him, and that is the biggest difference between any positions in the championship, because then from second down to third it's 2 points, third down to fourth and down to fifth it's 2 points and 2 points, and then after that it's 1 point per position for the other remaining 15 spots. So you have to do it per position from then on. We're into the final sixth of this race in just a few seconds, and it's still Lewis Ward 22.2 seconds clear of Mydas Tem, 26.9 clear of Callum Brandt. Oh god, I can't even anymore. I can't even put an idea on what's going to happen. We've just got to wait and see now. We really have to just wait and see. Battle here on screen though, Stuart Clark and not Mark Johnson, sorry, John Roberts in the Aston Martin.
Watching him go through now. I'm seeing all of these little battles occurring down the inside. Stuart Clark, has he got the move made on John Roberts? He's going to now pull up the power down and get the move done. There was, I think, a little attempt at a switchback manoeuvre from John Roberts, but the way that BMW just gets up and goes from the slow speed, it is very difficult to beat, especially in the Aston Martin, which is, that car's main weakness is the slow speed acceleration. It's a great little move that by Stuart Clark, puts John Roberts down into 12th place. Look as well though, Chaz. Biggest mover in the field is now no longer Mydas Tem, who's just coming into the pits, but rather Ralph Meyer.
Yeah, he's gained 8 places now in this race. I think he might be slightly out of sync with pit stops, though, so we'll have to wait and see when that cycles back around. But yeah, he's doing a great, great job. And there's people in the chat loving this strategy battle. We've got Dan in there as well, saying I love a strategy battle. And this is what makes it so intriguing in this championship. It's not just a sprint race, you know. People don't just disappear off up the road and win the race easily. We've seen drama, we've seen mistakes, and it's all gone to pot sometimes for people that look like they've got it in the bag. 8.5 minutes left to go here at the Hungaroring in round 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, the second season of this wonderful championship that's been an absolute joy to hold and joy to broadcast since day one. The drivers all enjoy racing in it, and even the drivers that aren't racing in it on the night, they love watching it. The feedback from YouTube's been great, and we really do hope you are enjoying it. If you're not already subscribed to Chaz Draycott Media, by the way, please do. I would really appreciate it. And, of course, make sure you like the video as well. It really does help them with the algorithm. Anyway, away from my marketing, Stuart Clark is still holding off John Roberts and Mark Johnson now he's got ahead. It's actually looking like the BMW gets to stretch its legs a little bit on this circuit. There's definitely points where that car is really good here, although maybe the braking zone for turn 1 is not one of them. Sorry, Stuart.
Maybe not so much, but yeah, like you say, there is some excellent areas for this car. Seen replay here.
No replay for me. This is Lewis Ward coming in.
This is, for some reason, my timing software is having a bit of a mare, but yeah, like you say, Lewis Ward into the pits, and now we have to focus on where he is and where Callum Brandt is on the road at this moment in time, because this is essentially the battle for the race lead, the race win as well. Could be in the hands of Lewis Ward. Comes to a stop, doesn't overshoot his pit box, which is crucial. Now, how long is he going to be stopped in his pit box for? The time keeps ticking up. 8.55 seconds as Callum Brandt is coming out of the final corner. I don't know if he's going to have the legs to close down and overtake Lewis Ward into the first corner. It is safe for Lewis as well. That is a huge testament to the lap times he's been putting out. Comes in and out of the pits, doesn't lose a position. And now Callum Brandt realises that he's going to have to settle for second place.
Well, look at the difference as well back towards Matthias Tem. I mean, when Dan McCauley and John Barnes come out of the pit lane, I can just figure this out for you so I can show you on the map. If we get 3rd, 4th and 6th positions come up on here, there they are. Look, Matthias Tem is the yellow dot and the other 2 grey dots are the RD SimSport cars. Callum Brandt is the number 3 and Christopher Smith is the number 4. Now that's the difference they've made.
Matthias.
And he has, yeah. Wow. That's amazing by Dan McCauley. Why did I not pick up on that? Thank you, Ed. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're switched on today. But flipping out, Dan McCauley stationary for 8.4 seconds. Matthias Tem stationary for 11.4. And yeah, I think Matthias Tem's pit lane time thing is definitely broken because it says he was in the pits for 4 seconds less in total. So there's definitely something not quite right there. But all of a sudden we've got a battle on our hands again here that might not even be for podium position. Now, Mike Horder could be the spoiler in all of this because he is still right in front of Callum Brandt. All he's going to do, though, is unleash Callum into clean air, but he's not going to be able to go full chat, surely, because of fuel saving. So he's not going to catch Lewis Ward at this rate.
Oh, he simply can't. He has to save the fuel if he's to make this strategy work. As you see, I think let's see what's going to come in the pits. No, Mike Horder carries on for another lap. Callum Brandt, though, he realises now that second place is all he can really fight for. Christopher Smith, he's probably going to be settling for 3rd place as Mike Horder comes into the pits. And I think the real battle's going to have to be for 4th place. Dan McCauley and Matthias Tem, you know.
Still absolutely all over one another now as well. It's great to see. We know how feisty Matthias can be. Hopefully this doesn't end in tears, but I've got all confidence that this is going to be a great battle to watch till the very end. Dan gets a beautiful run out the final corner. Matthias is, of course, going to get the slipstream. It's not massive in these cars, though. It really needs a long all straight to slingshot. They do not do 1 lap after the hour, Martin, so it depends on when the timer strikes 0. Martin in the YouTube chat there asking if they do an extra lap once it hits an hour, but no, as soon as it hits an hour, if they do that with 1 second left around the final corner and iRacing determines that that's enough time to clearly display the checkered flag, then that's what we go off. But we've had it before, haven't we, Ed, where they've come around the final corner with like 3 seconds left and it hasn't flown the flag and they've had to do another lap and people have then run out of fuel.
We will see if that is the key or if a factor that might play into the hands of Tyus Tem and Dan McCauley. Look at how close these two are battling now. The two black and green and white cars in varying amounts battling away for what is likely to be a net fourth place. Potentially still a podium on the cards though, because there is that question mark over Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith. Again, it's just where Matthias is fast is not really an area where he can make the moves stick. Has to rely on being ever so close out of the final corner as into the pits comes Mike Horder. Matthias Tem's gone for the move on Dan McCauley as well, Chaz. Up the inside, has he been able to get it to stick? He could be close coming out of the final corner. And all of a sudden now McCauley might try and fight back, you know. He's ever so close as we see. We'll wait to find out where Mike Horder is going to come out in relation to this battle.
Yeah, Mike Horder is in the pits. We'll be able to see them coming around the final corner just now. There they are at the top of his shot, making their way down the straight. Mike Horder is already moving. This could actually slingshot him ahead of the pair of them, you know. He might be in quite a comfortable position. Yeah, White Van Gaming in the chat asking if he had to pit. Well, there's your answer. And look at that, Mike Horder ahead of both Matthias Tem and Dan McCauley. He was stationary for 6.1 seconds and he's gained an extra place. So all of a sudden, when you talk about the team's championship battle here, what looked like a guaranteed haul of points for Apex Racing Academy, Dan McCauley now down in 6th place, while RD Simsport 2nd and 3rd. Flipping out. What a pendulum this team's championship is, Ed. I love it.
That was amazing. I think a lot of the time was lost for the pair of them battling away, as obviously Mike Horder was in the pits. I want to have a look to see if we can, Chaz, the moment where Matthias Tem got the move done, because it wasn't really what you would call a conventional area of the circuit into that final sector for an overtake to be made.
Oh, great stuff though. Dan does try and get the cutback, but unfortunately goes a little bit too quick into the corner himself. James Holman in the chat saying it's crucial for the team's championship, and he's absolutely right. You know, it's races like this, moments like this, that can swing a championship one way then the other. There's the lead gap. Lewis Ward over Callum Brandt. There's going to be one more lap to go here at the Hungaroring. Christopher Smith, though, what a drive he's had. It must be said, he's made this single stop strategy work as well. And if he finishes where he is now, he's going to gain his first podium position of the season for the BMW M4 GT4. A car that a lot of us are expecting to be phased out of iRacing in the later stages of this year, because the current M4 has now started racing. I'm pretty sure he he knows we're watching him, does Chris? Flashing his lights away. But we know that the current M4, the new M4, may make its way onto iRacing. I mean, it's in the advert that plays at the start and the end of these streams. We'll have to see. But now Lewis Ward, well, I'm sure he's going to have breathed a massive sigh of relief knowing that those cars will come out behind him. Niall in the chat, championship points? Yes, mate, championship points. Championship points everywhere. Such a close-fought thing. Great battle going on here, by the way, between Stuart Clark, John Roberts and Mark Johnson. Two Aston Martins hounding the back of this BMW. It's like a pair of terriers trying to take down a rhino. Fantastic. Fun entertainment between these three different drivers. See how this goes down in turn one. Stuart Clark missed his braking point here a lap or so ago. He's not going to make that mistake twice, is he? Mark Johnson sees a gap down the inside. John Roberts wants a cut back, and Mark says no thank you. John runs a little bit wide, gets sideways. Very scary stuff. I hope Mark wasn't looking left. He's going to try and go around him. We'll see how this pans out into turn two. John Roberts goes back down the inside. Mark closes the door on him, but somehow makes it work around turn two. But we have to go back to the front of the pack, and can you believe it? That's the battle for 10th place. Whoa, big slide by John Roberts. Back to the front of the field, though. And, well, he's been absolutely amazing so far this season, has Lewis Ward, and he's going to become the most winningest driver in the championship this season. Lewis Ward wins at the Hungaroring, and an incredibly impressive drive by the championship leader, and he opens up more of a championship advantage with pole position and a win. And is Callum Brandt out of fuel? I believe he is, but he's going to take the checkered flag in second. His teammate Christopher Smith is third, and RD Simsport, hats off to you. That was an amazing strategy. Great entertainment, really kept us on the edge of our seats. Mike Horder again, more solid championship points for him. Matthias Tem, a great 5th place. Great to see him a bit further up the order once again. Dan McCauley, 6th position. He won't be too chuffed with that one. That will be hard to swallow, that. Jacob Money is going to finish 7th. 2 places gained from where he started. And Ben Gregory is going to be 8th ahead of John Barnes and then Stuart Clark. Is he going to be able to hold these two off, Ed? Is he going to be able to do it?
It's going to be close. You can see him having to use the entire width of the BMW to keep those two Aston Martins at bay, but like you say, it's an area of the circuit where it's difficult to overtake, and as he rounds out through the final corner, he should be safe as he comes across the line. He will hang on to 10th place. Really, really good little battle between all of them at the end of the race. Properly clean stuff. But like you say, Chaz, that was a huge momentum shift in this team's championship for RD Simsport to finish 2nd and 3rd, where for all the world it looked to be on the cards for an Apex Racing Academy 1-2. That is a big shift in momentum, but huge credit to Lewis Ward. It doesn't matter if he's up against the 1-stop or a 2. He does the 2 stops and makes it work brilliantly.
He really does. That was epic stuff, and RD Simsport were mega as well. And again, we didn't really expect to have any 2 teams running away with anything this season, but to see these guys going head-to-head, race after race, time and time again.
They've had enough for an in-lap.
So much fun.
They've had enough fuel for an in-lap.
Yeah. What? I mean, is it?
It's ridiculous.
He's coasting a lot, but even still,
Yeah.
Is it dead though? I think it
might
is.
Just coughed up a bit now. Yeah.
I think. Oh, it's not a good noise. It's not a great noise, that. But still, what a fantastic race that was. So much entertainment all the way through. We hope you enjoyed that one. Let's have a look at the race results then. Lewis Ward takes the win, still winning by 13.8 seconds as Callum Brandt's car spat its dummy out at the end. 14.6 seconds back though. Christopher Smith takes his first podium of the season. Very well done to Chris. Great job by RD Simsport. But just another amazing drive by Lewis Ward. Mike Horder finishes 4th. Matthias 10 will be thinking, what if, after finishing in 5th. Then we have Dan McCauley 6th, Jacob Money in 7th. Bit sedate drive that from Jacob, to be fair. Ben Gregory 8th, John Barnes 9th, and Stuart Clark in 10th. Mark Johnson was just behind in 11th with John Roberts on his tail as well. Rob Sutherland, the driver of the day from Red Bull Ring, finishes 13th. Paul Goffin and Paul Gosling, flipping heck, don't get that wrong, 14th and 15th. Fausto Pinto 16th ahead of Rob Sharp, who recovers to get just a couple of championship points. Actually, no, he won't get championship points, will he there? Yes, he will. Sorry, it's top 20. I always get this confused with my Formula Renault championship. Rob Sharp, 17th. Ralph Mayer, 18th. And then the last 2 points finishers are Tom Weston and Kim Such gets points after being around at the very start of the race. Drew Fletcher does not finish. Neither does Heinz Mayer, John Tusting, or Philip Hopley. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And I mean, to be honest, Ed, we're going to have a nightmare, aren't we? If anybody asks us what was your favourite race this season. Because it's going to be so hard to choose. We've had so many absolute screams, haven't we?
They've been amazing. Yeah, I was about to say a race, and then I realised no, the other one was brilliant as well. I mean, it's been so tricky, but tonight has been a real battle of intrigue. I think it's fair to say between Callum Brandt, Christopher Smith, Lewis Ward, and Dan McCauley. I just don't know where it all went wrong for Dan McCauley. He was seemingly secured in 2nd place, building a gap to those around him, and then all of a sudden he was brought back in. Matthias then overtook him. Mike Horder got involved. Callum Brandt did, and then Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith went that extra bit longer, managed to make a 1-stop work. And Dan McCauley found himself going from 2nd down into 6th. RD Simsport 2nd and 3rd. It's difficult to imagine how, because you can't exactly pin anything on Dan McCauley. I don't think he did really anything wrong. He just, no. I guess, got a little bit unfortunate that everyone else around him just got it so right.
It was a real shame to see it go like that for Dan, but he's obviously being very neutral about it in the Discord. He's just said, well done, Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith. You've pulled an absolute blinder there. Mike Horder has apologised to Callum Brandt for the move early on. Matthias Tem just said, nice. The Aston can't do 2 stops, not when I tested it at least. Jacob Money even had just 0.1 litres of fuel as he crossed the line. I think it's probably we'll bring both of these drivers in at once because we need to have a chat about what the hell just happened there. Callum Brandt and Christopher Smith. Callum, we'll start with you, mate. No offence, Chris. But What a race, mate. What a race. You two must be over the moon that worked out in the end.
Oh, yeah. Really kudos to Chris. He came up with it. Managed to get past Dad at the first lap and see if I could try and give Lewis a race, and he was just too quick. I hadn't done enough practice, and yeah, just Lewis had a bit too much for me. I thought the only way I could try and sort of give myself a chance was strategy, and Chris had come up with the idea of doing the one stop, so just driving to a fuel number and trying to keep some pace up. But yeah, all credit to Chris because that was his big brain.
So, Chris, what size helmet do you take then to fit that massive cranium of yours in the car? Because that was 200 IQ stuff, that, mate. Very well done.
I just ran some fuel numbers and it just looked close, and yeah, a little bit of practice to try and get the numbers down to where it needs to be. I don't run caps or anything, so I can't tell what fuel numbers. It was all kind of like by feel. So yeah, it was pretty tricky, but I'm really glad it worked. And yeah, I mean, thanks for the tow, Ben Gregory. It's a shame it didn't work out for Ben. He did have a spin, and but yeah, it's really good that it came out well for us. And yeah, well done to Lewis though for still being ahead of us, with that pit stop. I'm not sure how long it takes to get through pit road. Must be about 25 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, so I think we figured out it was about 35 with a quick stop, like a very quick stop. Okay. But yeah, he certainly did pull a blinder, did Lewis. I mean, we all know what his pace is like. But coming to you, Callum, what was the Mercedes like here tonight? Because it was a circuit where it was difficult to tell where the cars had their strengths and weaknesses. It was a very interesting one because it's got a bit of everything around here.
It has, yeah. I mean, I didn't really enjoy it, but I don't really like Hockenheim anyway.
What about the Hungaroring?
Well, that too. Yeah, no, I probably didn't do enough practice, and I could do one quick lap, which I did do in practice, but I just didn't have any consistency really. So it was a bit of a dog. It just understeers, and same situation all season really. It's a bit of a
of a shed.
Yeah, that's it, mate. So yeah, it's just hoping you get a Mercedes-friendly track at some point. Because McLaren's just too quick in a straight line.
This track is similar to Red Bull Ring, though. It is so punishing on the incident points. It is really hard.
Yes.
And something that sold this fuel-saving strategy to me is that I was able to just drive at a more leisurely pace so that I wasn't pushing so hard. And the amount of 1x... I mean, I even finished with 10 incidents at the end, but if I was pushing, I would have been close to the penalty limit. Absolutely. And may well have been curtains for the race but by pushing because of the amount. I don't know if anybody got a drive-through in this race, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did because it is hard.
Now, you mentioned you want a McLaren, not a McLaren-friendly track, sorry, a Mercedes-friendly track. One that might be BMW-friendly next time round is going to be Monza for the 9th and penultimate round of the season. Now, I know the McLaren's very quick in a straight line acceleration-wise, but it gets to a certain point and then drops off while the BMW carries on going. Does that fill you with confidence going there, Chris? Because you've got your first podium this time out. Surely you want to carry on going one better.
Lovely. Yeah, Monza is a nice track, isn't it? It's good for this car. Just, yeah, there's a couple of twisty bits which I do struggle with. I have driven Monza a little bit here and there. It's not one of my best known tracks, so we'll put a bit of practice in and fingers crossed.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch that tonight, and you really did keep us on the edge of our seats. It was awesome, and it was very well commentated in the YouTube chat by your teammate James Holman as well, so you can thank him for us, even though he probably is still watching at this point. Callum, anyone you'd like to give a thanks to before you go?
Chris for the great strategy, also you guys in the comms box, and for putting this on, because it's always really enjoyable. And yeah, just everyone at RD for, yeah.
And Chris,
bearing us all on.
Oh, sorry, mate.
No, you're all right.
Any final thanks from you as well, Chris?
Yeah, just say hello to anybody who's watching from RD, and maybe my mum and dad, and you never know, maybe my wife might watch one day. And of course, my goldfish.
Well, thanks very much, boys. It is always a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you next time round at Monza. Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Well, there you go, Ed. What a fantastic strategy that was. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And they're chuffed with it as well. They know it worked. And to be fair, the fact that Chris did that and came up with that strategy without using anything like Caps, which is obviously a software that can really help you with statistics and plan your race for you, kudos, massive kudos to be able to do that without.
Yeah, that was a brilliant bit of strategy there. They got it absolutely nailed down in terms of the fuel saving, in terms of the way the race was going. They realised that what the best strategy was to get a result, and they just optimised it to perfection, which is what you have to do as a team to get those good results and to have the advantage going into the last stage of the season in terms of the team's championship.
And one of the drivers on the other end of that team's championship is Dan McCauley. Dan, it was all going well. I was going to say it was going well at the start, but you and Callum had quite the knock into each other. But that must have been a race that had you lot on the edge of your seats as well as us, because having that one-stop strategy is something we've never seen before in the championship.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Let me just pull my pants back up from around my ankles. Fair play to the RD boys. Me and Lewis thought it was possible, but we thought it was a little bit too risky. I was too focused on Callum, totally focused on Callum, did not realise what Chris was doing in the background. So yeah, that was absolutely mega from him. I think I might have got a little bit of rear damage from Callum on the start, because every time I hit the brake, I just had ABS lights flashing at me, and idiot me forgot to tick the fast repair at the stop.
Oh no.
So, yeah, it just felt strange. I ended up running like 49% brake bias, and it was just doing all sorts of strange things. But yeah, even if the car had been perfect, I couldn't keep up with Lewis. He was an absolute missile today. I think that's kind of what saved us from the insane RD strat. I think Chris needs to go for his interview at Red Bull Strategy for that one.
It really was a good one. It really was. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Lewis was on fire tonight. There was, I think, stages where there was about 3 or 4 laps of the race left, and he was only about half a tenth off the fastest lap of the race. It was just on an absolute another level. But it still keeps it exciting, doesn't it, with the Teams Championship? 2 rounds to go. We've got 3 weeks total, of course. We're at Monza next week, then we've got a week off, and then we go to Catalonia. Are you going to be putting in the time at least between those to really come up with something?
I'm not sure what else we can come up with, to be honest. The McLaren's not anywhere near as good on fuel as the other two by the looks of it.
Yeah.
That would have been... we were still putting in 13 litres at the end of that race. That we would have struggled to save that. But we're just going to have to see what we can do between us, I think. Maybe the McLaren's advantage over the Kerbs could help at Monza, but then again, the draft is just going to be insane. So hopefully Simon's back, and the top 4 can have a bit of a breakaway draft race. But Chris's BMW is going to be an absolute missile. So again, as I say every week, I think it's going to be all to play for at Monza. Could be anyone's game, especially when curveballs at that strategy is getting thrown. I think Monza's too much on throttle to maybe be able to do the one stop.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think certainly some single digit refuels at the end are going to be in play.
Well, it's going to be exciting either way, Dan, and we hope obviously it goes well for you and Lewis, and it's been a fantastic Teams Championship battle. We just wanted to thank the pair of you and RD for that so far, because it's been a great sort of underlying story to all of this as well. Even just away from the Teams Championship, it really is great entertainment. So thank you for that. And of course, is there anyone you'd like to give a quick thanks to before you go?
Big thanks to Lewis again for putting in some practice and trying to drag me up to speed. Even looking at his data, I still couldn't figure out what he was doing. The man's got happy feet on the pedals, it's insane. And just a big shout out to RD, that was, pulled a blinder.
Beautiful stuff, mate. Well, great sportsmanship as ever, Dan. Really appreciate it, and good to speak to you, mate. And we'll see you in a week's time at Monza.
Cheers, guys. See you at Monza.
Cheers. And that's another thing that we love about this, isn't it, Ed? The drivers all appreciate the strategies, they appreciate the races that their rivals and competitors have. These guys are locked in a really fierce Teams Championship battle. The Drivers' Championship is definitely swinging the way of Lewis Ward now, as if it wasn't before. But it's just the fact that they're in such close competition round after round. All it takes is one bad result from one team member, or it all to come to a head and have an incident, a bit of contact here and there, and it'll get absolutely thrown up in the air. But the sportsmanship between them remains fantastic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is balanced on the knife edge, though, like you mentioned, Chaz. And as we do come into the final 2 rounds of this second season of the SRM GT4 Challenge, you've got to think is this Lewis Ward's championship to lose now? It has to be. He's had 2 wins on the trot going into the final 2 races of the season, but what will the return of Simon Povey do to the championship as well? He might be one to throw the cat amongst the pigeons as well. So there's plenty of questions that we can ask, and we can only really get answers to them in a week's time at Monza.
Absolutely, and we all hope you enjoyed that race, and, well, judging by the chat, I think you all did. It was a brilliant, brilliant night of racing. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Lewis Ward takes another race victory and extends his championship lead with just 2 rounds to go, while RD SimSport take everybody by surprise with an amazing strategy. I've been Chaz Draycott with the wonderful Edward May alongside me in the commentary box. This has been the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, Round 8 of Season 2 from the Hungaroring. For now, enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Good night.
Opportunistic, still rubbing panels as they go together. It's folded the wing mirror in on Gerardo's car.
Misano is such a difficult circuit for these guys to get right. There's a lot of start-stop sections around the back. It's a very, very quick section as well.
It's a fantastic start from the 23. They're 4 wide there by the look of it.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Warning, the following video contains flashing imagery that may cause discomfort and/or seizures for those with photosensitive epilepsy. Viewer discretion is advised.
Tell me somebody how long he will be on my mind.